In Germany, we celebrate Mother's Day in May and Father's Day at some point in May or June. This year we got very lucky and both days fell on the same long weekend, so I decided to set off for northern Germany. Since I always give my mom a Mother's Day shawl, I thought I'd take you along on this little trip featuring lace knitting and glimpses of northern Germany in the middle of spring. Hello, welcome back to Down the Forest Path, a seasonal knitting podcast. My name is Nicola and I'm the host and moderator of this podcast. So if the intro has worked out how I was planning for it to work out, then you already know that I'm going up to my parents. I'm traveling with my husband and the cats this weekend to celebrate Father's and Mother's Day with them. I'm so happy that this worked out time-wise because that's really not a given, but this year I have no other obligations that are claiming my time, so I get to spend it with them and I'm really excited about that. But I really should be packing. I have like 20 things to pack still. And I've kind of stolen away to film this because I have to put this shawl in a little box, wrap it up, and then that's the last I will see of it until Sunday when I give it over to my mum, and then it's gone from my possession, so I don't get to show it to you. So I'm super glad that I managed to find a few minutes to talk to you about this shawl. If you've been watching this channel for a year or longer, then you know that I make two shawls for my mom every single year. One is her birthday shawl. Her birthday is in winter, so that's usually a kind of thicker shawl that's really warming, like merino, yak yarn, like something that's nice and a little bit like heavier, protective because it's cold in winter. Last year, for example, I wove yarn like the Alestamo 2-ply yarn, which is like a really nice woolly yarn, and then I kind of agitated it into almost like a tweed look. And the second shawl I make for her each year is a Mother's Day shawl. And Mother's Day in Germany is not like it's in the UK, it's in March. But in Germany it's in May. I think it's always the second Sunday in May. So it's right at the start of that really warm time and season. So it's right at the start of summer basically. So I always make her a shawl that is made from really light summery yarns. I've done linen before, I've done pure silk. And this year it's again pure silk. Without further ado, let me show it to you. So this is this year's shawl. And you see it's very see-through because I've blocked it quite significantly. And as you might also be able to see, and I already said from the drape and the shininess of it, it's pure silk. It's a really nice pure silk Tussah silk yarn from DyeforYarn. I think the colorway was called Fading Poltergeist or something similar. If it's completely off, I'll write in the description below, but I think it was something like that. And the pattern is Pearla by Anna Victoria. So you can see it's this kind of flowery pattern that starts with a flower up here, and then it grows into this kind of diamond pattern and then finishes in these little cute tips. So there we go. And I have a few thoughts about the yarn and the pattern that I would like to share with you before I wrap this up. But maybe let me see if I can put the shawl in the background of the video so I'm not just sitting here with my arm getting heavier and it being kind of in the way between us. But it kind of shows how nice and see-through it is. I'm really happy with this. And let me briefly put it on for you so you get an idea of how it would sit. It will sit very similar on her. We're both really short ladies, so I think it's going to be super nice for summer, and she's going to be able to wear it when she goes somewhere. It's not super protective for like sun stuff and things, but it's better than nothing. So yeah, let me put it in the background. Let's talk a little bit about the design of this. So this is a crescent shawl with this flower motif that goes down through these diamonds into these little tips. And I picked this blue gray color because it's basically exactly my mom's eye color. I actually sat down with a picture of her zoomed in on her eyes and then color matched it with the yarn from Etsy. So it took a little while, but this was the very closest I could get. And the color it looked a little bit different when it came than on my display. I think it will almost be the same. So I'm really curious to see when she wears it, if it really matches. And it's also got these beautiful little golden beads in, because my mom has these little golden sprinkles in her eyes, which I absolutely adore. And it also reminds me of like water in a swimming pool in summer, and she loves swimming, so I think that fits even better. So that was why I made the choices for the colors and the beads and the yarn that I did. I have a few thoughts about both the yarn and the pattern, both good and bad. So maybe let's start with the yarn. As you know, DyeforYarn is one of my all-time favorite yarn dyeing companies. It's a small business that's run by 2 women, and I love their colors, and their merino silk yak base is my favorite yarn base ever. There's a lot of good things about their yarn in general. I also love the naming of their yarn. Like, as you can see, they have this kind of like gothy theme to it, from them naming it Fading Poltergeist, for example. This yarn was super fun to knit with. It did not split at all because it's basically one strand. It was really easy to bead with as well, which is a huge plus if you're doing a beaded shawl, because you're not constantly kind of trying to rip the yarn through a bead with a crochet hook, which kind of like wears out your fingers over time as well. It kind of sometimes really hurts or makes little dips in your nails if you constantly pull it through. So I was really glad about that. For the first time ever, I've had this problem with them. I've not had this before, that the yarn colored off on my hands massively. So when knitting with this, I would really get like blue fingertips. It looked like a costume kind of blue almost. You could see where I had the yarn wrapped down my fingers for the knitting, for the tension, because I had like literally a strip of blue running over my finger. And I don't know what caused it. I had a little bit of sweaty hands while knitting, but I think maybe it was like the oil, like from the skin or something like that. But it just made my fingers blue every time I knit with it. And that just wasn't super nice, because even when I washed them, it wouldn't come off. I didn't know that before I started knitting. Otherwise I would have washed the yarn first, but then it was kind of too late because it was caked already. So I did not want to do that then. Or undo what I'd knit already. So I powered through with it, but I had blue fingers for almost a week, and I think even now I have scrubbed them quite significantly. But even now you can kind of see I have this hypoxia cheek look. I've had like slightly blue fingertips and joints, so I hope this will go really soon, because I'm getting a little bit fed up of that. But yeah, that was the one negative point about the yarn. And weirdly, it didn't come off at all when I was like blocking the shawl or putting the shawl in the water to soak, because I thought, I don't want my mom to have like blue dye on her skin, so I'm going to let it soak for super long and agitate it a bit in the water as well, so that definitely all of the ink comes out. But the water was not blue at all. There was no tint to it, so I really can't explain why it happened and why it's never happened before. I've had blue dyes from this company before. It's never done that ever. So it must be a kind of like a little bit, I got unlucky this one time, but it's not a standard for them at all. Apart from that, I think it's gorgeous. If you look at the drapiness and the shine to it, it feels super luxurious as well. So I would still recommend it. But if you go for like dark blue or green, maybe test first if it will dye off on your fingers as well, and then if it does, you can still think about if you want to wash the skein before knitting with it or not. So that was the yarn. Over to the pattern. So as I said, the pattern is called Pearla by Anna Victoria, and this is the second of her patterns that I have knit. I think I talked about the last one in the last video even, so I knit 2 in a row. And again, I would say this is not a beginner pattern. It's charted only, it doesn't have written instructions. I actually think it's quite useful to learn how to read charts. It has helped me a lot with my lace knitting. When I was starting out, I always found it annoying that people would be like, oh yeah, you're going to be much like quicker at seeing where you went wrong when you learn to read the charts, because I really didn't want to, because it looked like a whole bunch of work. But it kind of just automatically happens that you learn how to read them when you keep knitting with lace, and it's actually quite simple and worth it. But for your first pattern, you might want to go for something that has both written instructions and charts, because that makes it much easier for you to see where you are in a pattern. So it doesn't have that, which is completely fine. And it's not super hands-on, which is also quite fine. I think like the problem is a little bit with me, because the pattern also has multiple like times where it switches with how many stitches are between the stitch markers between the charts. So one chart will have 14 stitches between the stitch markers and the next has like 36, so it's also not a multiple of the original number. And then you have to put your stitch markers back in whenever you change the chart. And I find for me that's a huge source of errors potentially, because I am religiously using stitch markers. My brain will not knit lace without stitch markers like between every single like chart repeat. I use 30-40 stitch markers if need be in a shawl. I prefer that to having to like kind of keep focusing on it with 100% attention. I just can't keep up that attention forever, so it's a stitch markers project for me every single time. And if I have to keep moving the stitch markers between each chart, I then have to put a lot more time in to see like, did I do it right? Is it everything still aligned? And in this I went wrong, and I had to rip back, because from when I went here I kind of managed to move accidentally by 3 stitches. So if I'd kept it like it was, then this whole part would have been offset by 3 stitches to the left, I think. And I talked about perfection in my last video. This was a mistake that I personally would have repeatedly seen, and it would have actually really bothered me, because it would have thrown off the symmetry of the shawl. So in this case, I think it was fully warranted to just rip back and do it again. I didn't actually rip back. Rip back sounds a bit energetic. I carefully knit backwards the whole thing, and the whole row was like slip 2, knit 1, pass slip stitches over. So I kind of was really gingerly trying to do it. I think it was really worth it, and I'm really happy with how it looks now. But yeah, for me, I think I prefer shawls where the stitch markers stay roughly in the same place, or if it completely changes where the other chart is a multiple of the first chart, so you don't actually have to move the markers. And that's not the designer's fault, because she designed it exactly how it would come out like this, and it's absolutely pretty. But I think next time I won't push so much, maybe, and do a pattern that is much easier for me to do. But what I also really like about it is the second negative about it. Like at some point between the stitch markers I had like 36 stitches, 37, 38 per repeat, and I find it's too much for my brain. Like I just have to keep like really staring at it. I can't memorize the repeat whatsoever. It requires laser focus from me, and it's just quite draining over time. But for that you get these gorgeous kind of like peacock feathery motifs, and you see that they're not the same. So like you can see that this one here has this kind of net structure through it, whereas this here has this kind of like teardrop peacock feather motif to it, and it's always one then the other and then the first again. So that's how you get this beautiful pattern repeat with the different kind of feathers through it. It just requires a lot from you when you're just staring at this chart and just keeping going through it. And to be honest, I'll probably look back at this video in 2 years and I'm going to be like, that's easy peasy lemon squeezy now, because I will have knit probably like 10 more shawls and it gets easier with every single one of them. But where I'm at right now, this was a bit of a push and it was doable actually, like technically quite easily. Like the actual steps to do it, the stitches and everything is not hard, but it required upkeeping a concentration level that for me is at my current level of knitting quite difficult to upkeep for that long. So for that reason, for me this was maybe not the perfect pattern, but how it came out is absolutely perfect in my opinion. And I also ran out of yarn at the bottom, so I had to skip the last row, which would have given me really cute yarn overs down here that now I don't have. But I don't mind because it still came out super cute, so that's completely fine. I don't know what went wrong with the yarn range because I had the required meterage of yarn and I went down 2 needle sizes, I think, because I tend to have a little bit of a looser gauge, so I was already kind of accounting for that, but it would have still not been enough. So if you do knit this pattern, maybe go for a yarn where you have like 420, 450 meters off and not just 400, because that was what ruined that for me, but I don't think it matters in the slightest. I'm just really happy with this. So yeah, there you have it, Mother's Day shawl done, and I'm super excited about how she will react, and I have to get back to packing now. I've managed to entertain the cats the whole afternoon, so now they are sufficiently tired for car travel and we have to get going, otherwise they'll wake up again. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. If you're celebrating, or by this point you're watching this, if you have celebrated Mother's or Father's Day, I hope it was really nice, and I hope you can enjoy some really nice spring weather, and see you again soon. Bye!